First up is a film called Nimona. It's an animated film out now on Netflix, and it's based on the webcomic that got turned into a graphic novel by N.D. Stevenson. It follows Nimona, who is a shapeshifter who often takes the form of a human girl. In the film version of it, she decides to basically squire or apprentice herself to beleaguered, who is a knight, because this takes place in a sort of futuristic medieval world where, you've got this combination of, it's not the Hunger Games exactly, but it's more of like a popularity gladiator type thing, but also, they are knights. So Ballister comes from a different background than everyone else, and then, some story things happen, and so Nimona decides that this is who she wants to hang out with. This story is definitely different than the webcomic / graphic novel. Plot-wise, we are looking at some different things, some very different things, honestly. I understand the decision to make this a different plot, because I don't know if you could have successfully told the full story of the comic in a film. I actually really would have loved to see it as a series, but this film already had so much trouble. I'm so glad it came out, but it went through its own gauntlet and night trials, so we're just happy with what we got. Chloe Grace Moretz voices Nimona, Riz Ahmed voices Ballister Boldheart, Eugene Lee Yang, who you probably know from the Try Guys, voices Ambrosius Goldenloin. You've got Lorraine Toussaint, Frances Conroy, Beck Bennett, RuPaul is in it, and the thing that I am so grateful that translated over, and I don't think you could have made this story without this translating over, is this is a queer story. This is a story about, being uncomfortable in your body. It's a story about, being closeted in some ways or shunned by society for, when you want to express your true self. This tiny spoiler has just like an outright queer love story in it, which I loved that it was in there. And again, I say I love this because it was in the source material, and there's a world in which I could have imagined them trying to sanitize this, and it's still very tame. This is a PG rated film, but I just like that they pushed for this film as a whole and got it made, because this film has been in development for a very long time. Most animated films are, but it was at one studio, it was at Blue Sky, and they got, acquired and shut down and all this other stuff. And so the fact that it clawed its way into, the public's eyes is a testament to, I think, the strength of the story and the strength of the folks telling it and just everyone involved. So kudos. I really enjoyed this film. I actually had pretty high expectations, because I remember when people were working on it back at Blue Sky, they were really excited about it, right? And you don't always get that level of excitement from people who are so close to a project, but I had no idea what to expect, and it's been a few years, and I do think these stories are, I hate to use the word important, but it's important to just normalize these stories, right? And I think there are going to be a lot of folks out there who really identify with Nimona, and, the shape-shifting is a relatively, it's a pretty obvious metaphor in this case for transformative things, and I think also explicitly the trans experience, and if you want to research the writer, you'll understand where a lot of this comes from, but, it's a good story at the end of the day, and the fact that it has these themes is great, because like I said, I think generalizing them and distributing them and making it a not scary thing and helping give people a vocabulary around it, and especially for kids, and young folks who don't have examples of this in the media, like this is going to be revelatory for people, and I'm so happy for everybody who it's going to touch in that way. But even if you're not looking at it through that lens, I think it's a fun film. It's short, it's got a fair amount of humor. I think the voice actors did a really excellent job. Sometimes when you get folks who are not necessarily, they're great on-screen actors, but you're not sure if they translate to voice roles. Like, everyone did a lovely job in this. The animation is fun, the effects are very nice. The only comment I have about it is a lot of the themes are relatively generalized, and I understand having to do that because you're trying to reach a broader audience and you want people to feel included. But I had this sort of same issue with Elemental, where I was like, well, the allegory it's almost not too obvious, but could we go a little bit deeper in some places? But I actually think that this film did a slightly better job, because it was also focusing in on one more specific experience versus Elemental, which was talking about a bunch of different things. And it's not knocking Elemental, it's just something I've noticed in a couple, recent films. But Nimona is out streaming now on Netflix. I so encourage you to watch this film. I don't want to scare anyone away by being like, oh, it's a queer film, but it's just a fun film, and it happens to have queer people in it, and queer people are out in the world. So, you should just be used to it by now. So I'm going to give Nimona a 4.4 out of 5. The other thing I have this week is season 2 of The Bear, and I realized that if you already watched The Bear, I'm preaching to the choir. You are already going to be, watching season 2. I don't need to convince you. But if you are not watching The Bear yet, but you heard about it last year and you're like, oh, is it really worth it? And you're thinking about it, my answer is yes, it is absolutely worth it. But what I will say is that I have found season 2 of The Bear, and the entire season is out now on Hulu. The Bear felt like lightning in a bottle. I feel like for a lot of people, it was a fun water cooler show. There's so many memes online about like, yes, chef, and, plating food and preparing things and overdoing it, because the series is about basically a, small restaurant in Chicago that is a sandwich shop, and it has a Michelin star chef who comes home and effectively has to take it over. And it's the woes of business ownership. So I loved The Bear season 1. I thought it did a really great job of, and this is also, I say this not as somebody who coming from food service, but having folks who are friends in it, apparently it did a very good job of capturing authentic kitchen experiences, both for fine dining and for, a more casual thing. I love food, and I love the way people talk about food when they actually care about it and all that stuff. And so it was a very exciting show to watch. I think one of the slight challenges with season 2 is that it focuses a bit more on the woes of running a small business. And so some of it feels a little bogged down in bureaucracy, which is, it's a perfectly valid plot line. But I think maybe it was just the different headspace I was in when I was watching season 1, but I got so stressed out by season 2. I got stressed out by season 1, but season 2 is just like a knock you down. Everything is constantly chaos. The show is perpetually yelling at you. Like, I feel my blood pressure rising when I watch The Bear. But, I think the food and the love of the food is not as even in season 2. And that's not to say you can't have a good show without that. But I think it was one of the ways they were able to express some of the character development and through lines a little more effectively versus this sort of dealing with the bureaucracy side of it and bickering over, construction stuff that I don't know why, because this is it's probably more relatable. More people have had to deal with things wrong with your house or apartment or car or bills or whatever it is than they've had to deal with, like, coming up with these super bougie ingredients for food. But for some reason, the lack of specificity or the broadness of that takes a little bit away from it. It is still an excellent season. Like, don't get me wrong, but I will just caution folks. One, like I said, if you already watch it, you're going to watch this. If you don't watch it, please start with season 1 and just know that maybe take a little bit of a mental break between 1 and 2, because 1, it's just a lot of stress to ingest in one sitting. And 2, they are kind of different. And having the almost year between the 2 seasons, I think, did help in terms of, tonal spacing. But if you were to watch it all at once, I'd be like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. Some great guest stars in season 2. I did feel, I don't think they were gimmicky, but I don't know if some of them fit as well as I would have hoped. But anyway, The Bear season 2 out streaming now on Hulu. The entirety of the season. Go watch it.